dive into authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us, from personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
I'll stipulate. David, so it seems to me the defense is suggesting to the idea that Sean Combs controlled all aspects of her life, controlled her career, her appearance, very important power dynamics for sex trafficking. But it does become a question if this is relevant. What are you taking away from that?
Look, I think it's a minor point. I mean, they're arguing over the introduction of this photo, whether it comes in or doesn't come in. Is it, at the end of the day, is it really going to make a big difference? So I get it. But again, I think I don't see the relevance to it unless I hear more argument.
Got a question for you, Safa. This is from MM7. Is it likely the prosecution is starting with older victims and older evidence, Cassie, Kid Cudi, but as the trial continues, they will get into more recent crimes and victims tied into the RICO case? Good question.
It's very possible. I think one of the main reasons why Miss Ventura went first initially was because she was victim number one. Not only that, she's very heavily pregnant. She could go into labor at some point in time in the very near future. And they wanted to ensure that she would still be able to testify in the event that she ultimately went into labor and would be out on some sort of maternity leave for the remainder of the trial. So I think that's initially why they put her on. I think we've still got to hear from victim 2 and victim 3. I expect that they are going to be alleged newer victims and that they will provide more up-to-date or more recent testimony about more recent acts and activities alleged against Mr. Combs.
Safa, you mentioned alleged victim number 3, so let me throw this question to you. This is from Vero463. Wasn't victim 3 subpoenaed? Wouldn't they be prosecuted for not appearing in court? Because there's an issue about where is this person? Are they having trouble contacting this person? Good question.
They can absolutely be prosecuted. So it's going to be interesting to see what route the government takes with respect to this victim. That is a material witness. That person has been subpoenaed. I think I've heard not only have they not been able to get a hold of victim 3, but they also haven't been able to get a hold of the attorney. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's at least what I've heard. So very interesting to see how the government's going to handle this. Now, this person seems to not be cooperative at this point. Does the government really want to put a witness on who has been missing in action and uncooperative will also be a question that they're going to really have to strategically decide.
I got a question for you, Matt. This is from NLin93. If there were DNA from the car, so I think they're talking about Kid Cudi's Porsche that was allegedly set on fire by Sean Combs and his associates. If there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know? Because he was asked about, do you know if DNA was extracted from the car? And he didn't know. This was the question that he was posed by Brian Steele. The DNA taken, are you aware it came back being a female? And there was an objection. Okay. And then Steele says, do you know there were DNA results? And Scott Miscuddy said no. So I guess go back to the question, if there were DNA from the car, wouldn't the feds know?
You would certainly think so. But, you know, as a general proposition for everyone to understand, heat is one of the things that destroys DNA. Okay, heat, time, water. DNA is biological material, of course, and that you wouldn't expect to find too much at an arson scene when it comes to DNA in general.
I mentioned I have another question from you from Mbasa Nayebi. He mentioned this before. So you talked about how many times he can appeal if he's convicted. Follow-up question, can one appeal if they take a deal?
Generally, no. Once you take a deal, it essentially is the appellate process is essentially ended at that. You've admitted what you've done, but I don't see any prospect here of any sort of settlement in this. This is going to go to a jury.
There was talk about whether or not he rejected a deal before trial, but now we're in the crux of the trial. We're after Cassandra Ventura's testimony. So the prosecution could be like, you forced us to put her on the stand and recount these traumatic memories, alleged traumatic memories. They might not offer a deal, or if it is a deal, it's not going to be as attractive as it was before, right?
I just look, once the trial starts, once you get a jury panel, you start calling witnesses. It is very rare that this is not a civil case. And by the way, Dave Ring knows more about the civil side of sexual abuse than anybody else in the country. Civil cases often will settle in the middle because it's about money. Criminal cases are very different. This missile has been launched, so to speak, as one of my old bosses used to put it, and this is gonna get hashed out by the jury.
Speaking of David Ring, let me go to David Ring. We got a question from Claudio Zadorotos. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Could Sean Combs' defense be shielding officials present at the freak-off parties by not requesting the videos, choosing to play for a lighter sentence instead?
Well, I think if I understand the question right, are they saying is Sean Combs' defense trying to, hide evidence in this trial? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's tough to know. Shielding officials present at the freak-off party. So I'm guessing they're assuming there are other people who are being not mentioned at these, freak-offs, and was deliberately not, moving forward with more evidence to show who was there. But how that ties into maybe a lighter sentence, I'm not sure I 100% follow, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think that's the prosecution's job, right? The prosecution is the one they're going to go out there and they're going to find the witnesses who are there and who are willing to testify about this. So Sean Combs doesn't have any obligation to produce witnesses that hurt his defense. That's the prosecution's job. I think the prosecution so far has done a fine job of finding some of these key witnesses and former employees who are testifying and really laying out a RICO case against Combs and the enterprise.
So we have another update from court. It says, so again, it's back and forth about what image or images will be shown to the jury. The judge says, this one is of a public event, so what's the problem? Prosecutor Comey says, it's a low-cut dress. Judge says, I'm allowing it in, but not 652 nor 745. Bring in the witness and the jury, and the witness is a Mila Morales, who's a celebrity makeup artist. What's 652 or 745?
As far as the evidence code?
Yeah. If you know off the top of your head.
Essentially what the judge is doing is the judge is weighing prejudicial effect versus probative value on all these items of evidence. And the judge has to do that for virtually any item of evidence. So he is allowing in photos from the public event, but this judge has done a very good job, in my opinion, of kind of cutting away the fat, so to speak, on some of the more shocking or other things. For example, the jury saw stills of some of the freak-offs, but not the full video. It's going to be interesting to see what the defense does with that overall. But that's a judge's job. You're watching a judge essentially be a judge.
So before you guys got on, I was doing, I was giving my own analysis of the case, and one of the questions that I was asked was, if he's acquitted, do you think they're going to bring more charges against him? I said, probably highly unlikely. Whatever evidence they had against him, they were going to go forward with right now. Which does beg the question, because I brought it up before. I'll go to you, Safa. This is a question from Anthony O'Farrell. Why aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case? Because you and I know that he has been alleged to have abused minors in civil lawsuits. Criminal arena, very different than civil. But again, why, Safa, aren't there any minor victims in the criminal case?
I don't think that there's any evidence to support that there are any minor victims in this case. And if there certainly was evidence to support that, the government would have charged him with that. The burden of proof and the standard in our criminal world or during criminal practice is much different than civil. Civil is a much lower burden. With respect to criminal charges, there has to be an establishment of probable cause to make the arrest, and then the case will litigate on. And at the jury or at the jury stage, once the jury gets the case, the government has to prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for each element of each offense. I don't think that there is any evidence that would indicate that there were children victims or child victims, and because of that, the government wouldn't charge that.
Got an update from court. This is okay. So this is this makeup artist being questioned. The prosecutor says, "Do you recognize anyone you've worked for?" And Ms. Morales says, "Sean Combs in the gray sweater and white collar." "When did you work for Mr. Combs?" 2000 to 2005. "Then who?" "Rihanna." "Who else?" "Jennifer Lopez." "Cassie." David, what are you expecting from this witness?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure. We're going to find out. I mean, did she witness more violent acts? Was she involved in some of these RICO predicate acts that she was drawn into? Did she see the bruises on Cassie's face? Did Cassie confide in her that she was being, beaten by? We don't know. We're going to find out really quickly.
And maybe covering up the bruises with makeup. That could potentially be what's going on. Got a question for you, Matt. Chris Buono. Can Combs at any time during the trial be charged with even more, or did all the charges need to be revealed in the indictment before the trial started? So kind of similar question.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. The answer is no. Okay, the defense is entitled to notice. So if new evidence comes to light, they would have to, in theory, charge that in a separate case. But like you said, Jesse, that's very, very rare, if not impossible, when it comes to criminal prosecutions, because he has the right to a defense, he has the right to prepare, he has the right to investigate and all that sort of thing. So the answer is no.
Safa, a question from Lily Gazarian. If the case becomes a hung jury and needs to be retried, will he be released until the new trial begins?
I highly doubt that. They've made so many applications for his release, and the circumstances really won't change. They have to prove a risk of flight and a threat to the community, and they seem to have proven that here. And the judge seems to have gone along with the prosecution in the belief that there at least he may not be a risk of flight. However, there may be an issue with regard to being a threat to the community or witness tampering and things of that nature. So I do expect that if for some reason this lands in a mistrial, that he will remain in custody pending the new trial.
Okay, I got a new poll update and I got a court update. The poll update is, we put it out, does it matter if Diddy blew up Kid Cudi's car? 81% say yes, 19% say no. I side with yes, I mentioned it before, goes to arson, one of the predicate crimes, for racketeering, also goes to this overall concept of a criminal enterprise and violence and people helping Combs commit crimes or conceal crimes. That's the allegation put forward by the prosecution. Update from court. Prosecutor asks this makeup artist, "When did you work with Cassie?" Morales responds, 2007 until COVID. So 13 years. She was like a little sister to me. "How much older than her are you?" "A few years." "Did you see her with injuries on her face?" 2010 Grammy weekend Prince party. There you go, David.
Corroborative evidence. The prosecution's doing a really good job of bringing in other witnesses who corroborate Cassie's testimony. And why is that important? It builds up Cassie's credibility in front of this jury, that she's just not up there saying things that aren't true. Now you have these independent witnesses coming in, backing up exactly what she testified to. Very important.
But David, I will say, I think I could feel very confident to say at this point, the prosecution believes that Sean Combs physically abused Cassandra Ventura Fine. The documents, okay, the photographs, the 2016 video, her testimony, Dawn Richard's testimony, Kerry Morgan's testimony, makeup artist, her mother. I think there's a lot to suggest. The question becomes, is it sex trafficking? What do you think at this point in the case?
Absolutely, I think it is. Look, he is bringing in, basically male sex workers and paying them in cash to participate in these freak-offs. And you can have a debate all day on whether Cassie Ventura, it was consensual or not. I'll always take the position that it was not consensual. She is a victim. She's being beaten and she's being manipulated. And to me, that is absolutely sex trafficking.
Yeah, the counter argument is, of course, the defense would say it's just domestic violence. They're not attaching the physical violence to the freak-offs per se. But I will say this much. I think the two most concrete examples, why am I talking to myself? For two most concrete examples, I think, of sex trafficking, the 2016 tape, right? So he allegedly kicks her, beats her, drags her right after a freak-off or an alleged freak-off. And the allegation that on a plane, he shows her tapes of the freak-offs as a way to intimidate her, embarrass her, And what does he allegedly demand right after they land? A freak off. She has a freak off. That feels to me two concrete examples of sex trafficking.
Well, that's what the prosecution's theory is, certainly. But remember, there's essentially three incarnations of that. One is it's one of the predicate acts of the RICO allegations, okay? The other is the sex trafficking itself, but as the defense has pointed out, they must establish essentially fraud, coercion, or some form of threat or fear of force. So force, fraud, or coercion. The theory is coercion. She's being coerced to do that for financial reasons and everything else. The third incarnation, if you will, of that is the transportation of prostitutes over state lines. Sure. Those are Mann Act violations. Those carry up to a 10-year penalty each. I think the prosecution's already satisfied that.
I do too.
What the defense is going to argue is that this is exactly what you said. This is a domestic violence case. And it's the world's most persuasive domestic violence case with the video and everything else. But that is a problem in their relationship, and it doesn't go to advancing this criminal enterprise that they've alleged.
That's why they're focusing so much. He's jealous, he's anger, she was jealous, problems in the relationship.
I'm going to stop that there. They were wrapping that up. And I really want to point out maybe Diddy's lawyer was right about this just being a witch hunt against a black man that, billionaire playing with billionaire money on billionaire type of time. He pissed off Briaggio or whoever the hell that liquor is. They were able to get into some high places, set it off on Diddy, and this is what they got going on. We're now going to sip some tea from the Burden of Proof. Thanks to ABC News Live.
Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Week 2 of testimony in the trial against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs wrapping up today with witnesses, including the general manager of a luxury Beverly Hills hotel on the stand. The jury also hearing from rapper Kid Cudi today. He testified about a break-in at his house, at one point comparing Combs to a Marvel supervillain. The rapper, whose real name is Scott Mescudi, also testifying about his car being set on fire, allegedly after Combs found out he was dating Cassie Ventura. Now, prosecutors allege Combs firebombed Mescudi's car, an allegation they could try to weave into the racketeering conspiracy count involving arson. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. Also today, Diddy's former assistant, who was granted immunity, testifying about what he claims he saw happen on a private plane and an apple throwing incident that he called the last straw working for Diddy. Coming up, Kid Cudi's message for fans after his big day in court. Plus, it's one of the most searched topics tonight, what people want to know about Kid Cudi's dog. I want to get right to Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Katersky, who has been in the courtroom every day of this trial. Aaron, let's get right into Kid Cudi appearing in court. Paint the picture for us. How did he walk in?
Unlike any other witness that we have seen so far, he's in a leather jacket, white T-shirt, jeans, and smoking a cigarette as he's entering court. And then he takes his position comfortably in the witness box, surveys the room. The jury is interested in this figure because he's a Grammy-winning rapper, and introduced himself as Scott Mescudi. And when asked, are you better known as any other name? And he said, Kid Cudi. And right from the start, you knew this was a unique witness. And he talked about two instances in particular where he said that Sean Combs broke into his house, and he told the jury about his suspicions that later Sean Combs arranged the firebombing of his car.
Okay, Aaron, give us his vibe. What was he like on the stand? How did the jury react to all of this?
He was pretty casual. If he didn't understand something, he'd look at the lawyer and just go, huh? Or what? And at one point he let out a big yawn when he's talking about things that, have been talked about in the entertainment world for more than a decade. This car fire that Kid Cudi endured in 2012. But it's significant now, Eva, as federal prosecutors try to convince the jury that Sean Combs used arson as part of the criminal enterprise that he was running.
There was a whole scuttlebutt about if he could talk about what happened to his dog. What was that all about?
Oh, so he accuses Sean Combs of breaking into his house after he finds out that he's dating Cassie Ventura. And he says when he got to the house, he found some Christmas gifts open, unwrapped, that he had bought for his family, and his dog locked up in the bathroom. And he said it made the dog kind of permanently jittery and very much on edge. I think federal prosecutors had wanted to know a little bit about the dog and how the dog responded to the house being broken into. And the judge at one point, because the defense objected, was confused, saying, like, you're going to talk about the trauma inflicted on the dog. And the judge said, well, I know this is a very important topic. He laughed a little bit. And unfortunately, the prosecutor said the dog is no longer with us. But Kid Cudi's clearly a dog lover. He said that he found out from his dog's babysitter, the words he used, that his car was on fire. One early morning phone call that he received from this woman to say that his porch had been torched.
Cassie Ventura's former makeup artist was also on the stand today. What did she say?
Mila Morales said she first met Cassie Ventura, Eva, when she was about 16 years old. She had made her up for various events over the years, but she recalled Grammy Award weekend in 2010. She said they had been out. Prince was having a party. They were out for dinner. They finally get back to the Beverly Hills Hotel. Mila Morales falls asleep, but she says Cassie Ventura comes in a moment later and almost immediately followed by Sean Combs. And Sean Combs demands, where the F is she? Cassie Ventura had gone into the bedroom. Sean Combs followed her in there. Mila Morales says she heard screaming and a commotion. Sean Combs storms out of the hotel suite. And when Mila Morales next sees Cassie Ventura, she has a black eye, knots on her head. She took her home and had a doctor friend come and examine her to see if she had a concussion. The doctor recommended that Cassie Ventura go to the ER, but Morales said she didn't want to go.
We also heard from the general manager of an upscale Beverly Hills hotel on the stand today. He talked about hotel logs. Why?
This was from L'Hermitage in Beverly Hills, and Sean Combs had stayed there a bunch over the years, according to the reservation log. And with each guest that was a repeat visitor, there was what was called a profile log established. And under the
They got pictures of the hotels, y'all. Look at that. This is from the L'Hermitage Beverly Hills Hotel. Log shown the jury about Sean Combs' former stays. Girl, what the was they doing? And well, we know they was freaking, but like they was fighting too. Jesus, they tore that poor hotel up.
Had noticed that there was always candle wax all over the place and that he used a lot of oil. And the jury had already heard candle wax, baby oil, those were things for the freak-offs.
Aaron Katursky for us there at the courthouse. Thank you so much, Aaron. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer was also in court.
I mean, it just looked like, those scenes look like, the broken nights and dreams with Diddy days and nights. Everything broken, everything destroyed, everything in a disarray. And it looked like the broken dreams of Diddy.
Court today. You are here to break this all down for us. Okay, so it was a big day in court. What stood out to you?
So we all showed up for Kid Cudi. We knew he was going to testify, but I did not expect this quote from Kid Cudi. It came in the context of there was some back and forth between him and Sean Combs. He wasn't responding to him in terms of whether or not he was dating Cassie. His car gets Molotov cocktailed. He shows up at the Soho house to try to kind of squash the beef, so to speak, with Combs. And he says this is what Combs is doing. He's standing there staring at the window with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. It got a couple laughs in the court, but also painted this very menacing and very awkward kind of encounter between Sean Combs and Kid Cudi in relation to who's dating Cassie.
We also have to talk about this alleged car bombing situation. What did Kid Cudi say happened here?
So a number of things, right? A little bit of context. Prior to this alleged arson, there is a
Kid Cudi has introduced evidence into the testimony. That appears to be a picture of the top of his Porsche cut open, toe up,
that Kid Cudi.
What do you guys make of it? Do you guys think that, after 10 years, this can be something that they convict Diddy of, tie it into the racketeering, trafficking, arson, all of that, um, from 10 years ago? And do they have distinct proof that Diddy really did it? Any evidence besides Kid Cudi and others speculating that it happened? Because Diddy denies it. Is there anything other than them saying he did it as a way of proving that he did it?
He says Sean Combs is participating in. Someone calls him by the name of Miss Clark saying, Combs is in your home. He calls Combs. He's like, where are you? I'm here. I'm going to come see you, whatever it may be. And a few days later, this happens. The cut of the top of his Porsche and a Molotov cocktail inside. We saw some charring on the inside of that vehicle. And we've heard this from Cassie's civil lawsuit and this case when she testified before, that this was meant to be a threat, according to her, of Sean Combs towards Kid Cudi.
And we should say that we heard Kid Cudi on the stand say when they talked about this, Combs denied having anything to do with this apparent situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so on the cross, the defense seemed to really push Kid Cudi on his relationship with Cassie. What was that all about?
So the sense that I got was that she's playing into this relationship with Kid Cudi and Sean Combs. That Sean Combs, as we heard, was on a break with Cassie, and then they started dating, Kid Cudi and her. And what the defense was getting at was, well, she lied to you. She played you, that they weren't really on again, off again, but in fact, they were still dating, and you didn't know this. And the entire time you were dating, Sean Combs never interrupted this relationship, never got involved. He didn't know he was in the scene at all. And I think what they're trying to get at is Cassie was free to leave. She was free to have her own relationship, and Sean Combs wasn't intersecting with that. And also this idea that she was manipulative in some way, shape, or form, saying the words.
So how do you feel, Sippers, that this narrative plays into the prosecution or Diddy's defense? The defense attorney asked Kid Cudi, the person who played you, the person who played Sean, was Miss Ventura true? And Kid Cudi responds, yeah. So does that, testify into how Cassie was also wrapped up in manipulation, narcissism, and just, playing on the emotions and however have you of the men that she was involved with, all up until she finally did leave Diddy and get with the trainer, Alex Fine. Even up until she was with Alex Fine, she was still going back willingly, voluntarily, from what she testified, being with Diddy on an intimate basis. And she also said in her testimony, she did not want the freak offs to stop. She wanted them to stay how they were when they first started doing them. How do you guys feel that that's going to tie in for either side? I mean, I just don't see this persecuting Diddy. It's also showing how Cassie manipulated and played around with the men that she had in her life around the time she was with Diddy.
That, well, Cassie played not only you, but also Sean Combs, and Kid Cudi agreed.
We also have to talk about the former assistant who got the immunity from yesterday. He was back on the stand this morning. Did he say anything to you that made sense for the immunity deal here?
No. And it's one of the reasons why I woke up so early and showed up, because in my mind, I practice in the Southern District of New York. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you going to give this person immunity for? Meaning that they cannot be prosecuted based on what they say. That is so great that you're waiting for them. And it wasn't really much. 3 different interactions of assault, 2 between Cassie, 1 between Gina, and the fact that he bought some drugs, not as much as I thought it'd be.
Okay, so we've got this long weekend that's happening. Court's not in session tomorrow. It's not in session on Monday. How do you think that impacts both sides of this case?
It's all about what the jury.
Well, they're going to have a long Memorial weekend. No court for Diddy on Friday or Monday. He will be sitting in his cell awaiting to start its trial back up on Tuesday of next week, okay? The 27th.
Is going to be left with thinking about the last few words they've heard. They heard about the wax and the baby oil, the strawberry and the chocolates, the abuse allegations from the Grammy of 2010. And of course, the last thing they heard is about an HSI investigator talking about extracting information from 3 of Cassie's laptops. Those are going to be the last things in their mind over the next 4 days because they're off tomorrow as well.
Yeah, back in court on Tuesday. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much. Well, now that testimony is wrapped ahead of the long weekend, we want to look back at a notable moment this week. Yesterday, a forensic psychologist took the stand as an expert witness for the prosecution, telling the jury in general about why some people stay in abusive relationships. Joining me now is Dr. Erin Nelson. She is not involved in the case against Sean Combs, but she knows what it's like to be a forensic psychologist on a high-profile criminal case. Dr. Nelson, thank you so much for being with us. Let's just start right.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay gifted.